Brought to you by Atlassian, AI-powered collaboration software that makes the impossible possible.
Brought to you by Solidigm. A new era in AI requires a new paradigm of data storage. Learn more at storageforai.com. Meet Brex, the world's smartest corporate card. Brex cards help 25,000 companies control spend before it happens, automate manual work, and earn more. With Brex, you can make every dollar count effortlessly. Learn more at brex.com/grow.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, LA Times climate columnist Sammy Roth.
If you want this stuff to stop getting worse and more devastating long-term, you've got to deal with climate change, and there can't be enough coverage or focus on that.
Fast Company executive editor Maia McCann and senior staff editor Max Ufberg on the TikTok ban.
I think it was 10 Eastern Standard, and I think most creators were expecting it to shut down at midnight. So a lot of people were live when it actually shut down.
And as always, keeping tabs.
TikTok made, like you said, the most fleeting and random moments of ubiquity and monoculture that we've ever seen.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
Donald Trump was sworn in as president once again on Monday and almost immediately started firing off a series of executive orders, revoking a number of his predecessors' executive orders, and promising a number of other actions. These measures could have an immediate impact on the economy and test the limits of unilateral executive power. So we're going to deviate a little bit from our normal download format and run through these actions that are most relevant to business, tech, labor, and sustainability. And I should note these are changing almost by the hour.
So this could be wrong. We could be wrong.
There's going to be stuff that we're missing in here. Keep watching fastcompany.com for all the latest updates.
First up, trade policy. President Trump indicated that his administration would put a 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico, as well as a 10% tariff on Chinese imports starting on February 1st. He also signed an order to explore the feasibility of creating an external revenue service, ERS.
I don't know why that is so funny.
It's so funny. To collect tariffs. It should be noted that tariffs are paid by the importing country, meaning U.S. buyers would foot the bill for these new tariffs.
The call's coming from within the House. On Tuesday, the day after inauguration, Trump announced a joint venture between OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle to create at least $100 billion in AI infrastructure. This was teased a few weeks ago in a press conference Trump gave with SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son.
And more on him soon.
More on him soon. We have an interview with
Lionel
not
Barber.
Masa, but with Lionel Barber, who wrote a new book on Masayoshi Son. Elon Musk, however, threw cold water on the announcement shortly after on X, of course, saying, quote, "They don't have the money. SoftBank has well under $10 billion secured. I have that on good authority." So I think the honeymoon's over between Trump and...
I'm not making any predictions, Josh.
I don't know, but he's going to have to move out. Is he going to have to move out of the bungalow at Mar-a-Lago?
On immigration, Trump signed executive orders to end asylum, to end birthright citizenship, which is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, and suspend the refugee admissions program. Trump has signaled that his mass deportation program could begin as soon as next week.
President Trump has again withdrawn the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord. He also signed an order declaring a national energy emergency in order to increase domestic energy production, despite the fact that the U.S. currently produces the most oil and natural gas of any country in the world. Trump also signed an order ending the electric vehicle mandate, which is a mandate that is most notable for not existing to begin with.
Lots of changes are coming for the federal workforce. All DEI programs have been terminated across the federal government, and those working in DEI departments have been put on leave. Trump also issued an order freezing all federal hiring with the exception of the military or positions related to immigration enforcement, national security, or public safety. He has also removed all protections for transgender people, and all government documents will be required to only recognize two genders, male and female. Finally, on the workforce front, federal employees now have to return to office full-time. No more remote work.
And finally, some loose ends, a grab bag, if you will, of last orders. President Trump signed an order staving off the TikTok ban for 75 days. We will get into that in more detail later in the episode. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was officially created. This office will be led by Elon Musk alone, though, now that Vivek Ramaswamy has withdrawn from DOGE to run for the governor of Ohio, which I don't know why that's also really funny.
It's funny.
He was also reportedly begging Mike DeWine to make him the senator to replace J.D. Vance. So he just really wants to be an official from Ohio, I guess. And finally, Trump released a government-wide memorandum to reduce inflation. The only thing lacking from that memorandum was any details on how to reduce inflation.
And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, if you were president and you had to sign a very low-stakes executive order, arbitrary executive order, what would it be?
I think it would be banning theater kids from all public places.
I think that's really smart. Yeah.
Knowing that affects myself.
Imprisoning them.
For all theater kids.
I'll be crying so dramatically.
No, but it probably would be theater kid related overall.
They'd be like, you have to sing the national anthem at every...
A national ban on people playing piano in a house party that's not at their own house.
Is that a thing?
Yeah. Again, theater kids. If there's a piano in the house and you know how to play piano, don't start playing someone else's piano unprompted.
I've never
No one wants
That's
an impromptu
I support
cabaret.
that ban. I support that ban.
It's in a similar vibe. It's like a more theatrical version of a white guy playing
Kumbaya.
Like a guitar.
Yeah.
Like that I've seen. Yeah. This is a little bit more of like a...
Just some flair, some added
a little bit more
flair.
Yeah, it's true. They come on and start playing some Maltby and Shire tunes, end it. What about you? What executive order would
Mandatory
you give?
4 p.m. snack for everyone.
That I love. See?
Right?
I was doing things that are punitive. Mine was very authoritarian coded. Yours is really about health and wellness.
Yeah, mandatory 4 p.m. snack,
like
chocolate.
Michelle Obama's 60 Minutes of Play, but cool.
Yeah, exactly. I knew it, like, the minute I asked you the question, I was like, oh, I know what mine is.
Well, we'll put these in the till, maybe when we run for president one day.
Oh my God, the way our campaign would go to shit.
Who would be whose running mate?
I feel like I'd be your running mate because I feel like I have a real Selena Meyer vibe sometimes.
Also, the VP candidate is usually like the attack dog, and I feel like you're way meaner than I am.
That's also true. And I'm a woman of color, and we don't become president.
That's true. I do have, again, we talked about this with if I was a CEO, I already have 70% of the qualifications. I'm tall, white, and male. Same thing for president, if not more so.
Yeah, definitely more so, statistically speaking. Anyway.
The election's on our mind. We just went through all of the executive orders that came out, but let's talk about something, it's not going to get cheerier from here for a little while, but then we get to talk about TikTok later on. But we right now have to talk about something that's actually important.
Today, we're turning our attention to the fires in Los Angeles. As of this recording, the Palisades fire is just under 70% contained, and the Eaton fire at about 90% containment. So in other words, the fires are still burning and the smoke is anything but cleared. To better understand the fallout from this disaster, we are joined by Sammy Roth, the climate columnist at the LA Times. He has a column that runs twice a week and now a brand new podcast which shares his column's name, Boiling Point. Sammy's reporting centers on climate change issues and the environment in California, the American West, and beyond. Welcome to the show, Sammy. You are normally based in LA. You're not in LA right now. Have you been affected by the fires?
A little bit. Fortunately, my wife and I are not in an evacuation zone or one of the warning areas. We're a few miles away from the Pacific Palisades, so we've definitely had a lot of smoke in West LA from that fire. The air quality was pretty bad for a while. Definitely we're wearing N95s left over from COVID because, there's particulate matter in the air and all sorts of other noxious stuff from all of the homes and businesses that were burning up. And like everyone else, we have friends and family whose houses have burned down, which is pretty devastating. Hiking trails that we love, both in the Palisades area and in the Altadena area that burned down. So it's a tough time, but fortunately in terms of our home and our neighborhood has not been affected. So I don't want to say no, we're okay, because nobody's really okay, but we're better off than a lot of folks.
Of course. So I want to talk a little bit about people losing their homes and home insurance later, but first, somebody who's covered the environmental policy in California for a long time. What is missing from or not getting enough attention when it comes to the discourse around the LA fires right now?
I mean, it's sort of an easy one for me to say, but climate change. I mean, I write about this, so it's not missing from my coverage. And there are plenty of environmental journalists who are putting climate front and center. So maybe some of your listeners are reading them. But I've been consuming a lot of fire coverage and a lot of information about it. And the connection between rising temperatures, worsening whiplash between drought and flood in California. Climate scientists have been predicting stuff like this for a long time, and this is exactly what we're seeing. And there's been new studies coming out just in the last couple of weeks looking at the connection between fossil fuel emissions in the atmosphere and this type of extreme weather. It's not the only thing that's causing this, not in the long shot. I mean, we've been building more and more homes into the wildland-urban interface and creating more room for this type of destruction when fires do hit. It's not that climate change is creating the ignitions. Humans are mostly causing these types of fires in places like Southern California. But there's all sorts of attention being focused on, how could the city have responded better? Could the fire department have done this differently? Could Mayor Karen Bass or Governor Newsom have been more effective? Why wasn't there more water pressure in the fire hydrants? Trump has said all sorts of things that make not very much sense at all about water policy and the Delta smelt, which is a fish in Northern California, which has nothing to do with the fires.
The smelt conversation has been maddening.
How is that a word?
Well, smelt is a type of fish.
I know that's
not the point.
Of fish.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. But
it's not whoever smelted dealt it. Yeah, it's a fish.
It's the Delta smelt. Okay.
Ultimately, if you want this stuff to stop getting worse and more devastating long term, you've got to deal with climate change, and there can't be enough coverage or focus on that. And there's just that's been in a very small percentage of news stories, television coverage. Certainly, the political discourse needs to be more of that.
And wildfire smoke has really upped the death toll, right? Beyond just the actual fires burning people's homes down, it's going to have this long-term effect on people's health.
Oh, for sure. There's been something like 24 or maybe 25 deaths, last count I saw, directly attributed to the fires so far. But when you look at long-term health damage from events like this, wildfire smoke gets into people's lungs. You look at just health incidents. I mean, it's the same thing with air pollution from fossil fuel combustion. It heats the planet, but also just the direct, millions of deaths every year are attributable to air pollution from fossil fuel combustion. There's all sorts of robust research from that. And it's the same thing when you look at sort of the long tail effect from hurricanes and from heat waves and other extreme weather events. There's what happens when the actual event hits. But then when you look at the lingering health concerns from the exacerbation of heart conditions, from the exacerbation of lung conditions, from cancer rates, that's just from years and years after these events, it's really bad. This is sort of just the beginning. You can't just forget that it happened. Oh, okay, everything burned down. You start to rebuild. People are suffering for years and years after this stuff.
Now, the total losses from these fires are estimated at, we have a stat here at $250 billion. And across the country, home insurance rates are increasing, and insurance companies are dropping coverage of people in disaster-prone areas. I feel like this issue has highlighted a lot of those problems. Can you give us a broad overview of how insurance companies have played a role in all this, or what role they're playing now?
Yeah, the insurance crisis, which is one of many facets of the climate crisis, is as it's playing out in California and elsewhere. Basically, as you've seen wildfires getting bigger and more destructive, insurance companies have just been more and more hesitant to cover people in these especially fire-prone areas. They've been raising premiums. They've been dropping policies, refusing to renew policies. And state government in California, the insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara in particular, have been looking for ways, what can we do to incentivize State Farm and other insurers to either stop dropping people's policies, or even if they're going to raise premiums, to keep covering people. And literally, just as these fires broke out a couple of weeks ago, the insurance commissioner was finalizing these set of policies that he called the sustainable insurance strategy to basically lure companies back into the market in some of these very places where these fires happen. So that included allowing these companies to include the costs of reinsurance in their premiums. So these insurance companies go and they have other bigger insurance companies that they're basically insurance companies for insurance companies. So they're going to be able to pass along those reinsurance costs to customers, which they weren't allowed to do before. They're now also going to be able to use forward-looking models that sort of model out what are wildfires going to look like going forward, including, climate modeling, to set their rates rather than just looking backwards at what wildfires look like in the past, which is not really what they're going to look like in the future, which is all stuff that in theory makes sense. In practice, is quite controversial because ultimately what this is going to do is lead to higher insurance rates, which nobody really wants and is seen as potentially unfair and a boon to insurance companies. So this has all been hotly debated. The question now is, now that you have this, one of the costliest disaster in terms of economic damages and losses potentially in U.S. history, are these reforms going to be enough to actually get companies to keep offering policies and to keep offering policies that people can afford? That is yet to be seen. It might be now that this is nowhere near enough. Nobody knows.
The most recent figure I saw is about 15,000 properties destroyed, most of which are private homes. Obviously, LA is not a cheap housing market overall. I can only imagine that this is going to have a major effect on the price of homes, both in the short and long term.
Definitely. I mean, we'll see how bad it gets, but, there's already not enough housing in California and certainly in Los Angeles, and what there is too expensive, or a lot of it. You're already seeing as victims of these wildfires are just looking for places to stay. There's been all sorts of reports of rent gouging.
Oh, yeah, that stuff is insane.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, the market is a mess right now. And, as folks are looking to rebuild and as folks are looking for new places to live, if some of these neighborhoods are not rebuilt exactly as they were, it's definitely going to be a mess. It's going to probably for several years at least drive up the cost of housing in these neighborhoods and in other parts of the city as the effects ripple out.
We know that the fossil fuel industry is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. That industry has a substantial presence in California. But there are other culprits that you mentioned in your coverage that kind of don't get the same scrutiny. What are some of the industries and businesses in California that you think are sort of exacerbating climate change in the state?
Well, I mean, definitely fossil fuels are the big one. I mean, they are the largest source of emissions. Coal, oil, and gas combustion is by far the largest contributor. I should also say agriculture can sometimes go under the radar, but meat and dairy production, huge contributor. At the end of the day, when we talk about solving, or not solving because it's already here, climate change is not going to be stopped. It's just a question of slowing it or keeping it more manageable. Yeah. I hate the word mitigating, but it's true, mitigating. It sounds so wonky. Nobody would use it in conversation, but slowing or keeping it manageable. We're talking about things that are politically difficult and also hard from a lifestyle point of view. Not driving gasoline cars, not cooking on gas stoves, moving to induction stoves, eating less beef, potentially eating less dairy. That's tough stuff because these are things that are central to our daily lives, and these are industries that are pretty powerful. Plastics as well. I mean, plastic is a petroleum-based product. But at the same time, there are this is another wonky word that I hate to use, so I'm going to put big air quotes around it, co-benefits. When you talk about not driving cars that run on gas or using gas stoves, in addition to helping with climate change, that makes your air a lot cleaner, not only in the city for people who live near freeways where the air is terrible, but when you don't use a gas stove in your kitchen, when you use an induction or another type of electric stove instead, there's all sorts of research that makes the air in your home much cleaner and is just better for your lungs, much less likely to exacerbate asthma and other lung and chronic health conditions.
We talked a little bit about the price of homes potentially changing. What are some of the sort of overlooked costs and consequences of climate change to, the communities we're talking about?
Yeah, I think one thing that these fires right now, the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire, are showing is that climate crisis is really an all of society crisis. It's not an environmental issue, which I think probably a lot of folks know, but it's frequently still made out to be. I mean, some of the most damaging effects of this are not just in the Pacific Palisades, this sort of wealthy coastal enclave, but for instance, in Altadena, where the Eaton fire is burning, it's this historically Black community where a lot of lower income and middle income families moved because it was the only place that they could afford, and their homes and some businesses in that area are being burned down. On the front lines of these fires, hundreds of the firefighters fighting them are actually people who are incarcerated, who are getting paid far below minimum wage, far below poverty wages, to be out there on the front lines, breathing in the fumes, trying desperately to put out these fires, and probably going to be suffering health consequences as a result of that. All over the city, you've had people who work in restaurants and babysitters and people who are construction workers and landscapers and people who can't afford not to go to work, continuing to try to work through these fires, and who now, if their employers' homes burn down or if the businesses they worked for had to shut down, who are going to be not getting paid or don't know when they're going to be able to go back to work. Whereas the people who, even if their homes burned down, probably had the resources to deal with it and are going to be able to rebuild and have a means to get by. So just the ripple effects that we're talking about, whether they be economic or public health or environmental, those with more financial resources are going to have a much easier time dealing with them. Whereas those on lower on the economic or socioeconomic ladder, it's just going to be much, much harder for them to recover. And that's just how it works, whether you're talking about a storm or a heat wave or sea level rise or drought. The fewer resources you have, the harder it is to deal with and recover.
You actually said in a recent column about the LA fire, soon the world will stop caring, which is bleak, Sammy. But we have seen this again and again, when we think about everyone's reaction to virtually any environmental disaster or even the pandemic. What do you think needs to actually happen for either people to start caring or for legislators to start enacting meaningful legislation around climate change?
Well, a couple things. First, I would say that there has been, fortunately, meaningful legislation around climate change, and folks shouldn't forget that. One of President Biden's biggest accomplishments was he signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which was by far the biggest climate legislation in U.S. history. There were hundreds of billions of dollars in spending and tax credits for solar and wind and other clean energy and climate adaptation policies in there. And it's going to be pretty hard for President Trump, even though he's probably going to try to undo most of that. And in California, we've got 100% clean energy by 2045 is state law, and there's all sorts of good stuff that is happening. The trick is you've got to do it faster now.
Yeah.
All of the laws and policies on the book are not fast enough to avoid what scientists say are going to be the worst impacts if we don't reduce emissions more quickly. To me, the most revealing things is when you take polls and when you ask people, is climate change important to you? Do you believe in this? Is it a real concern? Large majorities of Americans, even across Democrat, Republican party lines, say, yeah, I'm concerned about climate change. This is something that I care about. But then when you ask voters, what are the issues that are most important to you, or what is the issue that's most important to you, climate change typically comes in like 12th or 14th or 16th after all of the things that you might guess, the economy, immigration, the fate of democracy, et cetera.
Yeah.
Not that those things aren't
TikTok.
important. Those are all important issues. But I think the most important thing that I'm always telling people is if you want to see progress on climate change, it's got to be, if not the top, then one of the top issues when you vote. It's got to be something that you're reading news about all the time and supporting news organizations that are covering. It's got to be something that you're posting about on social media and bringing up in conversation with your friends and family, even when they don't want to hear about it, and annoying them about. It has to be something that's driving decisions when you're purchasing products and deciding what businesses to support. To the extent that you're doing activism or advocacy or supporting causes, it's got to be a top priority there. It can't just be something that you say you care about in the abstract when someone asks you about it, but something that you actually make a priority in your daily life and especially in your voting decisions, which for most people it isn't.
But how can we impinge on people's freedoms to cook a steak on a gas stove while flicking cigarettes into dry, tall grass? It's, these are the choices we have to make.
It's funny that you should bring up the cigarette comparison because there was a time not so long ago when that was the attitude of most people. It's you can't infringe on the freedom to smoke a cigarette. You can't infringe on the freedom to advertise tobacco wherever you want. And now in 2025, it's kind of crazy to think that there was a time when that was normal. That's the premiere of Mad Men, and that's the comparison that that people in the climate advocacy world are making today with fossil fuels. It's like they're hoping that there will be a time not too long from now when we look back and say, how crazy is it that oil and gas companies could advertise wherever they wanted all of the time?
I do think that the thing that really killed tobacco was there's a direct link between wow, I smoked a lot of cigarettes and now I have emphysema. You know what I mean? Whereas climate change, there's this element of
there's an extra
one
step in there.
Removed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just tying that, because people obviously, if you ask them what should we be doing to fix these horrible forest fires or these terrible disasters, nobody in their right mind, unless you're apparently a Republican congressman trying to tie aid to some other conditions, which is a whole nother thing. People get that, but it's that step between climate change, fossil fuels is causing these fires, or is a major part of causing fires and disasters like that, which is hard. Sammy knows better than either of us. It's been really hard for media companies to effectively do climate change coverage or media because there's just a tough, like, it's hard to get people interested.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Those stories often don't do super well on our site.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about messaging and branding.
But we're glad you're here and listening.
Yeah.
It's hard for a lot of reasons. It's harder to get people interested. I mean, the breakdown of media ecosystems is tough because people can just turn wherever they want to if they see a message that doesn't comport with their, prior, values and knowledge base or whatever. And I mean, it's harder as well than tobacco because the global economy wasn't based on tobacco-based infrastructure in the same way that it's based on fossil-fueled infrastructure.
That would be crazy.
That would be crazy.
I mean, we could just tell people, hey, stop smoking tobacco. I mean, if they had passed a law that said no more cigarettes, a lot of people would have been upset and probably gone through withdrawal. But like the economy wouldn't have collapsed if we tried to ban fossil fuels tomorrow. It's not quite equivalent. But something's got to move a lot faster.
You conceived and started your podcast called Boiling Point, by the way. Same name as Sammy's column. It's really good. But you started working on it before the fires happened in LA. Will this event shift the focus or types of stories you were imagining reporting on for the show?
Yes and no. I mean, I think initially we'll probably do some more episodes of the Boiling Point podcast that are include discussion of the fires because that's on everybody's mind right now. The first episode of the podcast was definitely all about the fires and what they mean for the future of Los Angeles. And I'm talking about that in my newsletter and column too, also called Boiling Point, as you said. No, long term, I think that, it's all part of the same story, right? The fires are not totally, but at least somewhat a product of global warming. The solutions are the same. It's all part of the same package. We need to figure out how to get emissions down. We need to figure out how to adapt to the changes that we already have. We need to figure out how California can, even under Trump, continue to be a leader and not slide backwards. The fires exemplify that for better and for worse. So no, the story doesn't change. The story continues.
So Sammy was my editor at a college paper, so I love him.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I love you too.
He is one of the best environmental reporters in the country, and I always imagine you as Jack Nicholson in Chinatown when you're doing your job, because he investigates like energy in California.
Sure.
So
yes.
Sammy basically
you're
wears
right.
like a fedora at all times.
For the record, I have never worn a fedora, not once in my life.
Okay. Full neck beard, fedora
neck
style.
Beard, fedora.
I don't think that's what Sammy's doing.
That's how Sammy looks right now as we record this podcast, but you can't see him because this is an audio medium. But in all seriousness, Sammy, where can we find you on social media? Where can we get your podcast? Where can we read your column?
Yes, all the things. My podcast is called Boiling Point. It is on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and all of the various other podcast places that I've never heard of, but I think there are many of them.
So many. Sorry, this is a pet peeve. Too many podcast apps. Yeah,
I was looking at the list of places that it's at, and there's some of them that have like 2 downloads. Like, why are we there? It's like, okay, but it exists. Boiling Point, twice weekly newsletter/column. Go to latimes.com/boiling point to sign up. I am on Twitter, Sammy_Roth. I'm also on the B-Sky place now. Sammy Roth something. And by the way, since you mentioned Chinatown, fun fact that I don't think most people know, there is a sequel to Chinatown that actually, Chinatown's about water, but there is a sequel that is actually all about energy and about oil in particular.
What?
And it's called The Two Jakes. And it is not also starring Jack Nicholson. And while it is not as critically acclaimed as the first one, I thought it was nearly as good. And I would highly
Chinatown,
recommend.
the first one, sorry. I have dated so many guys who are obsessed with that movie. So I have pretended to like it for years. But that movie is crazy boring.
I've never actually seen it.
The reveal is not that good, but I will watch The Two Jakes.
Well, I don't necessarily want to identify with the probably terrible guys you were referring to. I will admit that I like Chinatown.
Several of them, but that's okay.
I'm more of an as good as it gets kind of guy when it comes to Nicholson's movies.
I like The Shining, but point taken. We will watch The Two Jakes.
The Shining is too creeping for me, but The Two Jakes, I would recommend.
Anything with Diane Keaton. That's where I am.
Sammy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very happy to. Thank you guys for having me.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Fast Company's Maia McCann and Max Ufberg to unpack everything that happened with TikTok over the weekend and how we got here in the first place.
It's not global warming. It's not access to health care, welfare, boring. Corruption at the top. Citizens getting shot. With all that's going on right now's the perfect time for banning TikTok, baby.
G'day, we're Atlassian. We make team collaboration software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, which power enterprise businesses around the world, including 83% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian, you'll unlock AI-powered teamwork, which means more time doing the work that matters. In fact, our customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. So you'll have more time to listen to podcasts. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. That's Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
An outdated approach to data infrastructure could be the thing that holds back a company's AI ambitions. The new era of AI requires a new approach to data storage. From the highest capacities to the highest performance, Solidigm solid-state storage solutions are optimized to meet the complex data demands at each stage of the AI data pipeline, all with a smaller footprint and incredible energy efficiency. Learn how Solidigm can help businesses achieve their AI ambitions at storageforai.com. Have you heard about Brex? It's the world's smartest corporate card. Finance leaders love it because it's got powerful controls and rewards that help them make every dollar count. Here's why Brex cards are so smart. You can embed your expense policy inside the card. This lets you control employee spending before it even happens. Brex cards also automate manual expense tasks like receipts, memos, and reviews. So you're freed to focus on optimizing your company finances. Over 25,000 companies take every dollar further with Brex. Join them at brex.com/grow.
First, President Trump tried to ban TikTok by executive order in 2020. Next, Montana tried to ban TikTok in their state. Then, Congress passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act this past April. Since then, we've been stuck in a loop of speculation about who might buy TikTok or if the app would actually get banned. As the January 19th deadline to sell or shut down got closer, creators started panicking.
I gotta keep it real. I am crashing the out right now. I don't know what to do. Oh my God.
TikTok stream's going off, guys. It's over for me. Guys, I'm going broke. I'm going broke now. You know that?
Government, I'm never forgiving you for this. And I'm never gonna trust you ever again.
This app was literally supposed to be my way out.
Fascist countries ban websites. Fascist countries ban apps and websites under the guise of threats to national security.
This just this is so dystopian.
Then, on Saturday night, January 18th, it actually happened.
Mark, what can you see? Is anyone hurt?
I wouldn't be surprised. There is so much damage down there. And there are people down there taking pictures.
It looks like some sort of huge, horrific, terrifying nightmare. Only this is a real thing.
But then, of course, 12 hours later, TikTok was back online in the US. Now, former President Biden said he wouldn't enforce the ban for 36 hours, and Trump signed an executive order on Monday delaying the ban by 75 days. Setting aside if that executive order actually holds water, TikTok is still operating in the US. All of this capped off one of the most insufferable news cycles in recent memory, at least for now. To help make sense of everything that happened with TikTok this past week and what might happen next, Josh and I talked to Fast Company executive editor Maia McCann and senior staff editor Max Ufberg.
What happened this weekend with TikTok? Because I'm completely unsure. Max, you're our tech editor. Can you make sense of this for me? I'm confused.
Okay, so TikTok, which is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, went dark early Sunday in the US ahead of a federal ban, which the Supreme Court upheld last week. And that ban requires TikTok to be sold or banned in the US. On the eve of the ban, a bunch of firms that provide web hosting and cloud infrastructure to TikTok dropped the app. So that means like Oracle, companies like that. And then also Google and Apple removed TikTok from their app stores. Per the ban, no one could host or promote the app. So that all happened Sunday. But then Trump said he would issue an executive order to put off the ban once he took office on Monday. So TikTok came back and actually had like a banner on the front page that was like, "Thank you, President Trump."
Didn't they have one before that was like, we're trying to work with President Trump to avoid this. And then it shut down for a grand total of 14 hours?
Can I reveal myself to be a huge loser?
Yes.
I think it shut down on Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Max.
Oh, yeah. Well,
your timeline was off, but that's okay.
Wait, wasn't it Sunday in China, though, where the company's based? So I was with Max.
Thank you, Josh.
Is that correct?
Well, I was like online when it shut down because I, again, am a huge loser. And I think it was 10 Eastern Standard. And I think most creators were expecting it to shut down at midnight. So a lot of people were live when it actually shut down.
I was scrolling, watching videos of Undodgeball where two people throw Nerf balls at each other's nads and it shut right off. That's a real TikTok, by the way. I forgot the TikTok account. It's like non-union dude perfect is this account. Anyways.
That's funny. So according to the order, TikTok will be paused for 75 days, and TikTok's business partners will not be held liable for still working with the app. But
the TikTok ban will be paused for 75 days.
The TikTok ban, that's what I meant to say. But Google and Apple still don't want to put it back on the App Store, right?
Right. They don't want to put it in the App Store. The thinking there is basically that they're awaiting additional protections before bypassing the ban that would punish the companies for distributing or hosting the app. So in a sense, it's great that Trump has this EO, but it's just all very legally murky. And it's not clear to what extent an EO can actually bypass an act of Congress. So Google and Apple are sort of just playing it safe.
Gotcha. Now, Maia, you called yourself a huge loser.
Yes.
Which, sure. I'm not.
I think what you're just saying,
but
I think it's totally cool
is
to be
a
on
TikTok nerd.
For the record.
And we know you have a TikTok famous dog,
yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
How did you see creators, as you were watching it shut down in real time, respond on that?
Your dog's colleagues, if you would.
My dog's colleagues. Well, in the weeks leading up to the Supreme Court's ruling, the tone on the app was lighthearted and even optimistic. I don't think anybody believed that an app with 170 million U.S. users would be banned. It seemed beyond the scope of imagination, if you will.
It did feel fake to me.
It didn't feel like a real thing. Like, it did feel like a fake law for a while, where it's just like, it's not actually going to shut down. Frank McCourt's going to buy it, or something's going to happen. And it didn't feel real for a while.
I think the mood shifted when no one seemed to be coming to save it. And in the hours before the app shut down, I would say about 48 hours before, news creators on the app, whether you think they're real journalists or not, started reporting that the shutdown was imminent. And many creators who documented their lives on their platforms started to download their content and tell their followings where they could follow them next. A lot of people were talking about Red Note, and then I think it became possible to download your content without the watermark, which was odd. That wasn't something you were able to do before. So I think a lot of creators felt like that was the CEO of TikTok signaling that it was going to shut down. Some of the bigger creators like Alex Earl, who has 7.2 million followers, she became famous from TikTok, said that they were in denial about the ban for a long time. Earl cried in a video she posted about the shutdown and said, "This platform is more than an app or a job to me. I have so many memories on here. I have posted every day for the past 6 years of my life." It has a weird effect on you, though, when you do download 4 years of content. If you have been making content, you start to see what you looked like and where you were at certain periods of time that you wouldn't remember. And
Don't want to remember that.
Yeah.
It's like when you scroll too far back down your own Instagram and it's like, Jesus.
Well, this is sort of I mean, there's a lot of issues with social media writ large right now. But I mean, Facebook, I don't go on Facebook anymore, but I haven't deleted Facebook because I have photos and stuff with people dating back. Like I did, everyone knows who listens to this podcast that I'm a theater major. I have a whole bunch of like production photos from college in there, and those mean something to me, and they live on Facebook. I still have a Facebook.
I need to friend you on Facebook and go through those photos.
I will not respond to your friend request. I've sent you many of them. I'll make them public. They're part of who I am.
You wearing a fedora A different fedora for every day of the week.
Never wore a fedora seriously. As part of a costume, yes. I will admit to that.
So, Max, is it likely that TikTok will get switched off
Can
again?
I jump back to this fedora? No. Just kidding.
Yes.
Okay,
actually.
is it likely that TikTok will get switched off again? We don't know. I mean, as we mentioned, like Trump's EO on Monday tried to clarify the kind of legal landscape for TikTok, but people are still pretty uncertain on the sort of enforcement there. The law does allow for one exception, which is that TikTok can continue to operate if Trump certifies to Congress that significant progress has been made toward TikTok breaking away from ByteDance's ownership. So basically, if TikTok comes under new ownership, it could be allowed to continue operations. And here, you know, there are a number of people who have expressed interest in acquiring TikTok. I mean,
Your good friend, Angela Zash's author,
Yes.
Frank McCourt.
Yeah.
One of them.
The other Frank McCourt, the billionaire Frank McCourt.
It's not Angela Zash's Frank McCourt. It's part Boston Red Sox ownership group owner Frank McCourt. Does he own part of the Red Sox?
I have I still don't really understand.
He used to own the Dodgers. That's right. We talked about this
Yeah.
because you came on when you did your feature on
Yeah,
Frank
so
McCourt.
Frank McCourt is now teaming up with Kevin O'Leary, the
Okay, we've talked about this on the show. I find it really hard to believe that any of the sharks actually have money.
They
You know
do
what I
have
mean?
money.
Like when you see them on the show, you're like, you must be broke.
Mark
right
Cuban still owns part of the Dallas Mavericks.
I do, but like I also 20 years ago watched The Apprentice, and was like, that guy won't be president. And then, you know, here we are. So
It's true.
It's
true.
It's Secretary of Defense Kevin O'Leary.
So Kevin O'Leary and Frank McCourt have kind of emerged as two of the more serious bidders. Steve Mnuchin was also interested, former Treasury Secretary under Trump.
Oh my gosh, give his crazy wife the reins of
Oh my
TikTok.
God, yes.
Louise Linton, have you watched her movie?
Yes.
It's crazy.
This is another digression. So there are some maybe serious buyers, but there's no imminent
Elon
deal.
Musk, we should mention Elon Musk has talked about
Floated
it.
that, but there was also like a conspiracy theory that like secretly Meta had bought this app. There was a lot of conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
which actually, like Maya, I mean, you were kind of tracking and seeing the nonstop disinformation on the apps, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were users that were reporting that Meta had already purchased TikTok when the app came back online based on a pop-up about sharing your videos with friends, which was something that you could do for years. In fact, I think I got that pop-up because, you know, as we mentioned, my dog is a power user of the app. I think I probably saw that pop-up a year ago and ignored it because I don't really use Meta platforms. And honestly, creators don't get paid on the content in the same way from Meta platforms as they do from TikTok. But I think TikTok users, from when the time the ban started, were looking for a workaround to the ban. I think this was how my 14-year-old stepson learned what a VPN was.
Nice.
Yeah. On Sunday, demand for VPNs spiked 827%, according to
Jesus.
Top 10 VPN. The top free apps in Apple's App Store after the ban were also TikTok competitors. RedNote and Likey were two of the bigger ones. And then the third most downloaded app was a VPN service. Some also posted on Instagram stories. And I think that the role that Meta plays in all of this is really interesting because there is a collective of creators that does not want to move over to Meta platforms. And they are talking about RedNote primarily and Substacks and creating Substacks. And then Blue Sky, of course, too. But I think that if creators are running an actual business on the app, like I would say like what we think of as influencers, they kind of are forced into going over to Instagram. Instagram is also sending out emails to creators whose I received one because I think a lot of my dog's fans moved over to Instagram pretty quickly and my dog's Instagram kind of grew in response to the TikTok ban. And that email was kind of inviting us to use edits and into a creator program. But you don't get paid on video views through Instagram. So it's not really for everyone.
But Instagram also launched a CapCut clone.
Yeah.
All of our posts got reformatted vertically. You know what I mean? It seems like the app is you know, making real effort to attract more
When
users.
I was opening my app up, it was defaulting to Reels. Did anyone else have that?
I don't know if it was defaulting to Reels or if everything was just in a...
Yeah.
They've changed it, or I think they rolled it out. So we noticed they started rolling it out. Actually, I was talking to the creative team here. We noticed that they changed the whole layout for some of the Instagram users to mimic TikTok on Friday before the ban even happened.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
And we should mention TikTok CEO Shou Chu was at the inauguration, so he is certainly courting the administration. And when TikTok was restored, the company actually posted a statement on X that really emphasized the economic opportunity it gives a lot of Americans. What did it say?
Yeah, it cites, I think, that over 7 million small businesses thrive on TikTok. And I don't know where that number comes from, but I've heard the 7 million number a couple of times, not only from that TikTok message, but from social media posts. I think that also that message thanking President Trump created an atmosphere of paranoia when the app did return, with a lot of creators suspecting that the app was already purchased by someone else or wouldn't be the same, and that the app was suppressing any sort of speech about Democrats or any resistance to Trump or elections being rigged.
I'm curious if you think there's going to be any kind of viable replacement if TikTok actually goes away. Like, where do you think...
I mean, that's a big question.
I think that Reels will create the viable, like, I think it's going to be Reels, if I had to guess, or YouTube Shorts. It's not going to be Red Note.
But they don't have the recommendations algorithm that I feel like TikTok really figured out.
But they have the infrastructure to develop one in a better way. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, does Red Note, is there another?
It's the money piece. I mean, you can get paid from the views on YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
You cannot get paid from the views right now, the way it's set up on Instagram.
Ah, okay.
Also, Instagram doesn't have, so there's this other aspect, which is like a huge rabbit hole, which is TikTok Live and the way that people get paid off of that, which is like basically, it's like begging. And so there's a bunch of like sub creators who are also like, honestly, like the lower brow creators like Ash Trevino, who make money from people just watching their live streams, often like hate watching them, and then giving them like galaxies and gifts. And then
I could make money doing that.
Well,
People
that was
would hate watch me so hard.
There was, remember the NPC trend where someone was doing like, oh, thanks for another rose. Thanks for another rose.
Yeah, that was
and it was
so
just
weird.
People sending
Timbaland. It was Timbaland specifically sending that lady. Do you not remember this?
No, I don't remember this at all.
Gang.
But they were basically gaming this system of lives overall. But I also know like a lot of gamers do it. There's a lot of like streamers who will do live, basically Twitch streams over there because it's another place to monetize.
There's also ASMR live people who start, because I got into that for a while, like listening to them, which is also like, again, I'm a huge loser, but they were like, start at midnight and just do like these ASMR things. And then if you like hit like enough times, they get paid off of that. And then they would like switch the tactic they were using to make noise.
We should do that with this podcast because there's a podcast called Sleep With Me that's like a sleep stories podcast. Everyone listening to this, we're great to fall asleep to. Just let our feed run.
Just let it go.
Let us rack up you don't have to actually listen to us.
No, I have a really annoying laugh. I think that's what's stopping us.
Yeah.
If we're honest.
Oh, man.
So in the newscast last week, we talked a little bit about a TikTok alternative called Red Note.
We just mentioned it a little bit earlier, too. Yeah.
Max, where does that all stand?
So Red Note is another Chinese app.
Which, can we just say, is so funny.
Yeah. It's like whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
You want to watch vertical video and not affect national security with your data? Here's another Chinese company.
Right. I mean, I think that's, the reason so many people were jumping over to Red Note was like a big middle finger to the government. But, Red Note is not China's TikTok. That would be an app called Douyin. Red Note is more like, or was historically more like if Pinterest and Instagram came together as an e-commerce juggernaut with short form video. But they have updated the app over the last couple of days to try to accommodate all these TikTok migrants, so to speak. It also added a feature to let users translate posts and comments from Mandarin and English. And there's been an interesting exchange where...
This is so good.
Yeah, Chinese users are helping these new US users navigate the app. So like advising them to not post photos with guns or nudity. which for the US users is a tough sell.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then American users have like been giving these tutorials on Walmart and like very American thing. That's kind of an awesome cultural exchange, honestly. RedNote has also been hiring like crazy. I mean, it shot up to the top of the App Store after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of enacting the ban. So they're trying to scale accordingly now.
And actually, on RedNote, a lot of Chinese tech industry workers sort of were complaining or posting about working really long hours. And my favorite exchange was when random people in the US were like, interesting, this is what it's like to work at Taco Bell. It was like, okay. Maia, have you explored RedNote as an alternative?
Yes. I joined and posted like 2 videos. For me, though, it felt very fleeting to me. I think because I've worked in this field for so long and I've seen so many apps pop up. And remember that Facebook alternative that was called
MySpace?
No, I do remember that one. There was something else that I feel like this was like in 2013 and I went really hard for it. I was like, this is going to be the future. And now I can't even remember
the Google Friends?
No, it was something even more
I was like, that's going to take over the world.
The Google Friends was also, people thought that one was going to be big.
Yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm. The thing I liked about my TikTok was I put in not a ton of effort. So like whenever I explained to people, it was like, I'm going to post videos of my dog anyway. And with RedNote, I felt like I was going to have to do more work. So I posted a couple videos and then I stopped.
Never forget in 2013 when I invited a group of people to go to LPR to a Gautier concert on Google Friends. That was like, this is all here to stay.
You were really going timeless.
Yeah, you were super cool too.
We should, speaking of super cool, we have our tween, senior tween, I want to promote her to global tween correspondent.
Global tween, there we go.
Yeah, our global tween correspondent who, it's our editor, Amy Farley's daughter, Eleanor, who we've talked to a number of times. Eleanor Woodsworth, who we've talked to a number of times on the show about Sephora, about Wicked, and it's no secret, tweens love TikTok and the content. So Yas talked to Eleanor a little bit about how her and her friends are feeling around the potential could-be ban.
To discuss TikTok's impact or the loss of TikTok's impact on tweens, I have to welcome back our senior tween correspondent, Eleanor Woodsworth, to the show. Hey, Eleanor.
Hi.
So, Eleanor, you're, I think it's fair to say, pretty obsessed with TikTok and TikTok trends, but you're not actually on TikTok. You get that content somewhere else, right?
Yeah, I usually get it from like YouTube Shorts, but it all is channeled from TikTok. Like everything on YouTube Shorts is from TikTok. It's basically like I'm on TikTok, but it's just YouTube Shorts.
Do you find that most of the trends that you and your friends or your peers adopt or are into come from TikTok?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't really realize until like a week ago that when TikTok was getting banned, that like my whole life and like a lot of my friends' life is really reliant on TikTok, even though most of my friends are on TikTok, but even the ones that aren't on TikTok, their whole life is kind of like lived through TikTok. Not everything, but just like the way we speak is lived off of TikTok, from trends, the things we like, the way we like dress is all from TikTok. So it kind of affects our own lives, like even the people who aren't on TikTok.
What are some of the biggest obsessions or trends, you know, from the past couple of years that you and your friends have really adopted?
The dancing is a big one because I first adopted that when I was like 7 with my friends.
Wow.
But yeah, it was in like quarantine. I would be on YouTube. I wasn't even on YouTube Shorts and I would just see all the dances. But I also think just the way we do our makeup or our skincare, like people a few years ago when they were 12, they wouldn't do like makeup and skincare, but TikTok has like showed us makeup and skincare to use as 12-year-olds. So now we're doing that. And I also think the way we speak is affected by TikTok because words that
no other generation really knew, like skibbity toilet is affected or like mewing or low key and they even brought back some words like preppy or aesthetic. So, and Riz is a new one. So I think it's just our way of speaking and just our whole life is affected by TikTok.
When it looked like TikTok was going to be shut down for good, what were conversations like with your friends or at school? What were people saying about it?
A lot of people were like really sad about it because some people grew up on TikTok, but also a lot of people like me grew up with TikTok. But also a lot of people said that they could just go on Snapchat Spotlight or YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels. So it was kind of like mixed emotion.
Do you think, you and your friends or your generation could kind of identify trends or follow the same trends if TikTok was shut down?
Maybe, but TikTok is kind of like the mothership where all the trends channel to all these other social media platforms. And if we can't really decide on like one mothership, then where will our trends come from? But not really a big agreement on like which place to go to.
Do you think people could come to an agreement, or do you think there's just too many options out there?
I don't think so. Everything came from TikTok. All the other platforms were like echoes of TikTok. But if there's no TikTok anymore, then what will be the platform that will have all the echoes?
I know over the past weekend, a lot of people were revisiting or rewatching old TikToks before it was shut down and then put back up. Why do you think people were doing that? Is that something you were doing?
I think people did that because a lot of these influencers grew up on TikTok and they have a lot of nostalgia because they saw themselves grow up through this app, and they like kind of their whole life is shaped around this app. So they were looking back at their old videos to kind of bring back a sense of nostalgia from back then, from when they were young, and how seeing themselves grow up on TikTok, it was kind of like a second home for them. So I think a lot of people were doing that for like nostalgic reasons.
Yeah, it sounds like when someone's TikTok disappears, it's like all their memories are gone, right?
Yeah. Some of them are sad to see how they grew up go, even though it's not just their memories.
What is your favorite trend that emanated from TikTok from the past few years? Like when it got shut down on Saturday, what was the one that you were like, oh man, what a memory?
I would say like one of the newer ones, like the Sephora craze, because I was a big part of that too. But one that really like stood out to me was like the dances like the Renegade and the Savage, which came out like 2020, 2021-ish. So like early COVID. And I remember just my friend being over, or I think we were in the park or something. And I wasn't on TikTok, but I just knew those dances from YouTube or just hearing the music. And I remember I was in the park with her, and then she said, do you want to make a TikTok video? She was like 7 or 8. I said, sure. And then she did the Renegade or Savage with me. And it's just like a lot of memories from that time that I felt like were going to get lost from TikTok. So I think that was the trend that I was most sad about to see leave.
Well, this was great, Eleanor. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
So we're back with Max and Maia, and instead of doing keeping tabs this week because there is too much to keep tabs on and it's kind of crazy and depressing, we are going to ask you both for your favorite TikTok memories. Are there any cultural moments or videos that you'll miss? Maia, let's start with you.
Well, my favorite TikTok memory was when Kim Petras followed my dog Smokey.
Ooh, that's pretty
big.
Cool.
It was a pretty big deal. I also really enjoyed Noodle, the no bones pug.
Yeah.
I loved Noodle.
Yeah, Noodle. And now Noodle's dad, John, actually owns another foster pug named Milton, who's also now doing the Bones No Bones, if you want to check in on them.
It's not the same.
No, but it's a pug and it's so cute. Dog content. I love dog content. I'm fostering another dog. I have 2 dogs. I'm fostering a dog currently because
You're turning into David Lidsky. It's because David's gone.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd be like,
I'm fostering another dog today.
I have 7 dogs in my home right now. You'd be like, what the hell?
I added 3 stories in there.
That was a really good impression. That will only
That
was
only
pretty
make
good.
sense to
Yeah.
people who once worked at Fast Company. But
If you listen to 2 episodes on this podcast
no,
for
but
David,
when he
it's-
came on the podcast, he made an effort to sound normal, which was disappointing.
It was. I love David's voice. David listens to this. Awesome. He kind of toned himself down the last time we had him on. Yeah. Don't be offended by my impression. It's out of love. I love your voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much.
Max,
yes.
what's your favorite video or cultural moment?
Back in October, there was this TikTok trend where people were taking these Wednesday Addams plush dolls ahead of the new Addams Family movie and flipping Wednesday Addams' hair upside down so that she looked bald. And like there was one
so good.
where someone said, "Just doing God's work," and posted a video with the dolls, which I thought was really funny.
That is so funny.
Also, I would say Jenna Ortega, who played Wednesday Addams in the reboot, weighed in on social media and said, like, please don't do this. And the top comment under that was, quote, "If not flippable, why make flippable?" That's a good point.
It's true. They're not wrong.
No, not wrong at all.
Josh, what about you?
My favorite moment was, and this relates back to a story I did earlier this year, but a couple years ago when Ned Fulmer and Try Guys started trending, and most of the people who were making videos about it were just asking, who is Ned Fulmer and what is a Try Guy?
It's true.
It was the craziest scandal overall.
How
and
did
people
that
are
blow
like,
up so much?
wait, who is Ned Fulmer? What is a Try Guy? Wait, he did what?
Ned Fulmer.
They released an apology video?
Ned Fulmer, like the name sounds like a cartoon elephant.
Wife guy Ned Fulmer.
Former wife.
It does. Former wife guy. Yeah, exactly.
Mistress guy.
He had an affair with a food baby.
What?
There was an SNL sketch about it. It's a whole
I
thing.
missed that.
Yeah,
but I do remember
Donald
this.
Gleason. Anyways, I interviewed the remaining Try Guys this past September, so listen to that episode. I asked them about it. They do not like me.
They really didn't want to talk about it.
They really did not want to talk about it. It's the first question
You were
I
like,
asked.
what's the deal with Ned Fulmer? And they were like, fuck you.
What was I going to start that interview with? No, like, it tanked their business. Like, they lost a ton of followers. They lost all their brand deals, and they've had to kind of rebuild from there. What did they expect me to ask them about first?
The Try Guys example, it's kind of indicative of how the TikTok era was like, everything was so fleeting and ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which made everything kind of confounding. Like, it was like, you'd wake up and everybody would say, you haven't heard of the Try Guys? Like, and it was as if everyone had known about the Try Guys for the last 10 years, but actually, you know, you probably hadn't heard about them until the last, like, 3 days.
It was the most efficient examples of monoculture that we've largely lost. Like, nobody's watching Seinfeld every single week again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything's so fractured. But TikTok made, like you said, the most fleeting and random moments of ubiquity and monoculture that we've ever seen. So, Yaz, what's your favorite TikTok memory?
I got two. I've spoken about her on the podcast several times now, but Sing Sing, the Tibetan macaque, who's missing an arm and is being taken care of by a grandma in China, is a TikTok star who I love.
That's fantastic.
She's amazing.
Oh.
She eats anything.
Oh, I forgot one of mine.
Yeah, do it.
Anouk. Does anyone remember Anouk? He was
No.
like this singer. I forget what country he's from, but he would just sing Christmas songs in a beautiful voice. It was trending for a while. This guy
is
called
the
Anouk
most
singing
Josh thing.
the Christmas song, and it was just him going, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
So good.
So good. Anouk. Beautiful voice of an angel.
But the real person I'll miss, and I would say me and David Salazar, friend of the pod, are president and vice president of his fan club, is the Rizzler.
Of course.
I don't really understand.
Kid's adorable.
I don't really understand the lore of the Costco family, But I do.
But he's not part of the Costco family.
No, so that's the thing. He's not related to them. He's just in all of their videos.
Yeah.
He's confusing.
Big AJ and I forget the other one.
Big Justice.
Big Justice.
I'm not familiar with the Rizzler or the Costco.
Please just Google the Rizzler right now.
There's a lot of YouTube deep dives on that strange family.
He's a child who is really cute.
So cute.
But also pulls one of the funniest faces of all time.
It's so funny.
And
he's the one, it was like the mewing trend is like part of this as well.
This must be the Riz face
The
I'm
TikTok?
finding on Wikipedia.
Yep.
Yeah, he's the Rizzler.
The Rizzler.
Yeah.
The TikTok where he went to football camp is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
So what we're saying is thank you, President Trump, for saving TikTok.
I was at the dentist and they were inspecting my teeth and I was like, have you heard of the Rizzler? And I pulled out my phone and tried to show this guy a few months ago. Anyway, my teeth are fine. My brain's not. And that's it for Most Innovative Companies. Max and Maia, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom, editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we will see you next week.